Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Storytime Episode 4. Today's episode is going to focus on one of the leaders of English history, Ethelflaed. All right, so how does a ruler defeat fierce Viking invaders, secure a kingdom, and lay the foundations for modern-day England, and then almost get written out of history? By being a woman, unfortunately. Over 1,000 years after her death, Ethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, is emerging from the shadows of a history that all too often does not give women their due. All right, before England was united under one king and became, well, England, there were people known as Anglo-Saxons who had small independent kingdoms ruled by their own kings. Born into a tooth-and-nail war for survival against Viking invaders, today's hero, Ethelflaed, the eldest daughter of the King of Wessex, Alfred the Great, grew up in a realm teetering on the brink of defeat and disaster, but also opportunity for those who were willing to seize it. To deal with the ever-present threat of Viking raiders, King Alfred had made an alliance with Ethelred, Lord of the Mercians, in an attempt to unify their armies. His daughter, Ethelflaed, subsequently married Lord Ethelred, strengthening the alliance and setting the stage for Ethelflaed to become one of the first female leaders of English history, even if she doesn't get all the credit. Ethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, ruled the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Mercia, which is located in modern-day England, from 911 AD until her death in 918 AD. She was a significant figure in the events leading up to the creation of the Kingdom of England and a whole lot of fighting against the Vikings. Like all great rulers, or superheroes, the origin story will help explain a lot. When her husband Lord Ethelred died in 911 AD, Ethelflaed became the ruler of the Mercians in her own right, and this was highly unusual. Usually when a king died at this time, the queen would be dismissed at best from the royal court. But Ethelflaed had positioned herself as a true leader and influencer. She had the skills and the people loved her. Building projects, treaties, and even military campaigns were done in her name. Dr. Claire Downham from the University of Liverpool said, "She must have had quite a force of personality to overcome the assumptions of her time. It is a mark of her success that in male-dominated times, she was accepted as a ruler and achieved incredible, even unique things." Working with her brother Edward, who had succeeded Alfred as king in Wessex, and the guy who usually gets all of the credit, we'll see why later, the Saxons went on the offensive, conducting raids deep into Viking-held lands, and they kept winning. An Irish chronicler, observing her skillful handling of the troublesome Vikings in Chester, called her Queen of the Saxons, and the inevitable counterattacks by the Vikings soon began as the armies of the Vikings came crashing into Mercia. They quickly found out that Ethelflaed had a few tricks up her sleeve. At one point, she instructed her troops to drop beehives from the wall towers onto the raiding Vikings, and they were just being stung from head to toe, and obviously that's going to give the Mercians a huge advantage. She also strategically gave up some territory to the Vikings, losing a battle or two, with the mind of winning the overall war, which she would. And as the Viking invaders burnt and looted some of these cities that she had given up, Ethelflaed and her brother Edward gathered their forces and they struck at just the right moment. At the Battle of Wedensfield, the Vikings were annihilated, shifting the balance of power really forever in England. But the Vikings weren't going away without a fight. In 913, a Viking army was sent to bring the Mercians and their lady under control, and it was repelled once again. The next year, 914, the previously aggressive Vikings, who were now isolated due to Saxon gains in the south and in the west, surrendered to the Lady of the Mercians without a fight. Even in the town of York, which was a nerve center of Vikings in northern England, even they promised to obey her commands. The Irish Chronicle says, "Her fame spread in all directions, and through her own cleverness, she made peace with the people of Scotland and Wales." So, yeah, peace music. Go peace, go peace. So on top of being an impressive wager of war, She was an even better wager of peace. Thank you. Thank you. So, that brings us to the big question of this story, though, which is, why is Ethelflaed's name not blazoned across British history? Why don't we know more about her? Why isn't she as famous as some other historical figures? Alison Hudson from the British Library has an answer, and she says it's about who wrote the history, as it often is. And unfortunately for our hero Ethelflaed, again, according to Alison Hudson, the most commonly used version of these events that we just heard about was written in Wessex under the reign of King Edward, and it almost completely writes her out of existence. Well, Ethelflaed is really subduing the Viking raids and negotiating peace treaties. The Wessex Chronicle concentrates entirely on Edward. She's barely mentioned at all. And most of her achievements are contained within a different version of the Chronicle. According to Miss Hudson from the British Library, the Mercian Register gives far more credit to Ethelflaed. Tellingly, records from Ireland and Wales, which were also beyond the reach of Edward, who had his designs on Mercia, really talk up her accomplishments and gives us a better picture of what really happened. But at the height of her success, tragedy struck. Ethelflaed fell ill, and she was taken to Tamworth, where she died on June 12, 918, probably around the age of 47 or 48. And England would have to wait until the 16th century for another queen to rule unchallenged in her own right. And that, of course, was Queen Mary I. But that's a story for another day. Well, kids, now that you've listened to the story, I hope you'll go back to our Google Classroom and answer those questions on the exit form so you can show me all that you learned today. And we only have one more episode left of Storytime. It's going to be episode 5 coming at you next week. So until then, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you around.